Welcome back to another episode of A Better Way of Earning, where work, life, leadership, and money come together to help you build success on your own terms. I am your host, Dr. Michelle S. Thomas, and today we're talking about entrepreneurship, but probably not in the way many people expect. I'm not going to spend this episode trying to convince you to quit your job, launch a side hustle overnight, or believe that entrepreneurship is some magical shortcut to freedom. That messaging may be popular online, but it's not always healthy, honest, or complete. Entrepreneurship can be powerful. It can create opportunity, flexibility, ownership, and purpose. But entrepreneurship also requires responsibility, discipline, emotional maturity, financial awareness, and a mindset strong enough to navigate uncertainty. So, before we celebrate the idea of owning a business, we need to have a more grounded conversation about what it actually takes to build something that can last. Because the truth is this: entrepreneurship is not for everyone, and that's okay. But entrepreneurial thinking can benefit almost everyone. There's a difference between choosing entrepreneurship as a career path and developing entrepreneurial thinking as a life skill. There's a huge difference. Entrepreneurship is a career choice. Entrepreneurial thinking, however, is a capability. And whether you eventually build a company, work for a Fortune 500 corporation, become a teacher, enter into healthcare, work in technology, join a nonprofit, pursue skilled trades, or build an entirely different career, learning how to recognize problems, identify opportunities, create value, manage resources, communicate ideas, and execute solutions will make you more valuable almost everywhere, anywhere you go. So today's episode isn't really about teaching you how to start a business. It's about teaching you how to start thinking differently. Let's get into it. One of the loudest public playbooks surrounding entrepreneurship today says this: entrepreneurship is the fastest path to freedom. And I understand why that message is attractive. Social media has made entrepreneurship look exciting, flexible, creative, and glamorous. We see people working from beaches, talking about passive income, posting revenue screenshots, celebrating big launches, driving expensive cars, and making it seem as if the only thing standing between you and freedom is the courage to quit your job. And sometimes people present traditional employment almost like it's something to be embarrassed about. You may hear comments like this: you still have a 9 to 5, as if having a job means you lack ambition. So let's slow that down for a moment and talk about what that message leaves out. First, there is absolutely nothing wrong with having a job. Let me say that clearly, because so many people have been made to feel as if traditional employment is somehow a sign of failure, fear, or lack of ambition. That's simply not true. There are people with traditional careers who are equally fulfilled, financially secure, deeply respected, and living lives they genuinely enjoy. There are also entrepreneurs who are exhausted, overwhelmed, financially unstable, isolated, and quietly trying to figure out how they are going to cover payroll, taxes, inventory, marketing, customer service, and their own personal responsibilities. So we have to be careful about romanticizing one path while shaming the other. Neither employment nor entrepreneurship automatically creates freedom. Quality of the decisions you make within the path matters more than the label attached to it. And this is especially important for younger listeners because the internet can make it seem like if you're not building a business by a certain age, you're already behind. But behind whom? Behind what timeline? Behind whose definition of success? You do not need to rush into entrepreneurship because a stranger online convinced you that employment means that you're thinking too small. Sometimes a job is not a limitation. Sometimes a job is a training ground. A healthy job can provide training, mentorship, industry knowledge, relationships, benefits, income, leadership experience, exposure, and something we have talked about extensively this season: career capital. Sometimes the job that you are tempted to dismiss is actually financing your education in how an industry works. It may be teaching you how customers behave, how teams function, how money moves, how leaders make decisions, how systems break down, and how problems can be solved better. So pay attention. Do not simply ask, how much am I being paid? Also ask, what am I being paid to learn? That question can completely change how you see the season you are in. Now that we've challenged the public playbook, let's name one of the biggest success blockers that shows up around entrepreneurship today: the highlight reel hustle. The highlight reel hustle happens when we fall in love with the visible rewards of entrepreneurship without understanding the invisible responsibilities required to create them. It is the moment when the lifestyle becomes more attractive than the learning. The title becomes more exciting than the responsibility. And the image of being a business owner starts to overshadow the actual work of building a business. We want the freedom, but we may not understand the discipline. We want the revenue, but we may not understand cash flow. We want customers, but we may not understand sales. We want followers, but we may not understand marketing. We want employees, but we may not understand leadership. And many times, we want to become the CEO without realizing that CEO does not mean Chief Everything is Awesome Officer. Sometimes it feels more like Chief Everything is My Responsibility Officer. And I say that with love because if you've ever owned, managed, launched, or led anything, you know exactly what I mean. Entrepreneurship can be amazing. It can also be incredibly demanding. It asks you to make decisions where answers are unclear, solve problems when resources are limited, manage money before it even becomes abundant, serve customers constantly, communicate value clearly, and keep going when the applause fades. That's why I want us to take a healthier approach. The goal is not to scare anyone from entrepreneurship. The goal is to help people enter into it with their eyes open, their mindsets prepared, their support systems honest, and their foundation strong. So before you fall in love with the title, learn the business. Before you chase the image, build the capacity. Before you announce the dream, understand the responsibility. Because entrepreneurship is not just about starting something, it's about becoming mature enough, skilled enough, and grounded enough to sustain what you start. Now that we've named the success blocker, let's build a clear understanding of what entrepreneurial thinking actually means. When I use the phrase entrepreneurial mindset, I'm not talking about a logo, a website, or a LLC, or even a social media page. I'm talking about a way of seeing the world. The entrepreneurial mindset is the ability to recognize needs, identify opportunities, create solutions, and take responsible actions to produce value. I want you to notice that definition carefully because I did not say own a business. You can demonstrate entrepreneurial thinking as an employee, as a student, as a leader, as a parent, as a volunteer, or as someone who simply refuses to ignore problems that could be solved better. One of the biggest mistakes I see new entrepreneurs making is starting with the question, what can I sell? Now, there's nothing wrong with wanting to create something people will buy. A business absolutely does need revenue. But if we begin with the selling before we understand the problem, we may end up building something that looks very impressive but does not actually serve anyone well. The healthier question is, what problem can I solve? Businesses exist because someone needs something. Someone is experiencing friction, frustration, delay, confusion, inconvenience, exclusion, or an unmet need. And a builder decides there has to be a better way. And if you've listened to this show for any amount of time, you know why that phrase means so much to me. Ascent did not begin because I woke up one morning and thought, I want to build a technology company. The roots of Ascent came from years of seeing real problems inside of hiring and workforce development. Talented people being overlooked, professionals struggling to articulate what they actually can do, employers relying on systems that did not always reveal the best candidates, non traditional experience being undervalued, and the bias entering decisions before skills could ever be evaluated. That is a completely different foundation for building. When you begin with a problem instead of simply beginning with a product, you are more likely to create something useful, sustainable, and connected to real value. Now, here's a simple formula you can use whether you're building a business, improving a process at work, or evaluating an idea before you invest too much time, money, or emotion into it. Problem: what is not working? Person: who is experiencing the problem? Possibility: what could improve their experience? Proof: how do you know your solution actually works? Value: why would someone invest time, attention, or money in it? That is the beginning of business thinking. Not logos, not websites, not business cards, not social media followers. Value. A business begins to take shape when a person, a real person, has a real problem. Your solution improves their experience, and there is enough evidence to show that the solution is useful. And here is the beautiful part: you can use this same formula inside of a company you do not own. When you begin solving problems rather than merely identifying them, you develop a different level of career capital. You become someone who does not just notice what is broken, but helps create what could be better. Now, I need to say something with so much love because this is where a lot of new entrepreneurs get stuck. Having a good idea does not automatically mean you have a business. Ideas are important. Ideas create possibilities. Ideas can open the door to innovation, creativity, service, and impact. But a business requires more than an idea. A business requires a customer, a clear problem, a solution people understand, and enough value that someone is willing to exchange either time, attention, trust, or money for what you provide. This is where entrepreneurs sometimes become emotionally attached to their ideas. We can start believing, I love this, so everyone else will love it. And maybe they will. but maybe they will not. And that does not mean the idea is worthless. It means the idea needs to be tested. This is why successful entrepreneurs learn to test assumptions. They talk to people, they ask questions, they research, they create small versions before investing everything. They listen to feedback, they adjust, and then they try again with more information than they had before. One of the greatest entrepreneurial skills you can develop is the ability to hear no without translating it into I am a failure. Sometimes no means you're speaking to the wrong customer. Sometimes it means the price is not aligned. Sometimes it means the timing is off, the message is unclear, or the solution does not fit the need as well as you thought. And sometimes no simply means no, my friends. That is still information, and information helps you build better. This brings us to another success blocker that can quietly shape the way people build: validation dependence. When you're building something, especially in the beginning, it is natural to want people to understand it. You want your friends to celebrate it, your family to support it, your coworkers to respect it, your followers to engage with it, and potential customers to immediately see the value. But here is something I've had to learn over the years: not everyone has to understand your vision in order for you to responsibly pursue it. However, and this is very important, it does not mean you ignore useful feedback. There is a difference between confidence and stubbornness. Confidence says, I believe enough in this idea to test it. Stubbornness says, I refuse to listen to evidence that my idea needs to change. Great entrepreneurs learn the difference. They do not build entirely from applause, and they do not abandon their vision simply because everyone does not understand it yet. They learn to listen for information without becoming controlled by approval. So, when you're evaluating an idea, use the evidence over ego test. It helps you to separate what you hope is true from what the market, the customer, and the numbers are actually showing you. What do I believe? That is your hypothesis. What are people telling me? That is feedback. What are people actually doing? That is behavior. What do the numbers show? That is evidence. Then adjust accordingly. This is where maturity shows up, not in pretending the idea is perfect, but in being willing to refine it based on truth. Do not build your business entirely around compliments. People may tell you that is a great idea and still never purchase it, share it, use it, or return to it. Pay attention to behavior because behavior is data. If people say they love the idea but will not take action, that tells you something. If they keep asking for a version you have not considered, that also tells you something. Evidence does not exist to embarrass you, evidence exists to guide you. And when you learn to choose evidence over ego, you give your idea a better chance to become something useful, sustainable, and real. Now, let's go somewhere that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, especially people who are considering entrepreneurship. We have to talk about sales. For many people, the word sales immediately brings up pressure, manipulation, cold calls, awkward pitches, or the feeling that someone is trying to convince you to buy something that you actually do not need. That is not healthy sales. That is bad selling. Healthy sales is different. Healthy sales is helping someone determine whether the value you provide can solve a problem they actually have. That means sales is not just about persuasion. At its best, sales is service, communication, listening, clarity, and trust. And even if you never become an entrepreneur, you are already using sales skills in everyday professional life. In an interview, you're communicating your value. When you propose an idea at work, you are selling the idea. When you ask for a promotion, you are demonstrating why your contribution matters. When you recruit people to support your project, you are helping them to understand the vision. So, no, sales is not a dirty word. Sales becomes unhealthy when it disconnects from truth, pressure replaces trust, and the goal becomes closing the deal instead of serving the person. When sales is rooted in integrity, it becomes one of the most valuable skills a builder can develop. But before you try selling anything, use what I call the value conversation. This framework keeps the conversation centered on service instead of pressure. V, verify the need. Do not assume the problem. Ask thoughtful questions and make sure you understand what the person actually needs. A, ask and listen. Give the person room to explain their experience, concerns, priorities, and expectations before you present a solution. L, link the solution. Explain how what you offer connects directly to the problem they just described. Make the value clear, practical, and relevant. You understand the objection. Do not become defensive when someone hesitates. An objection may reveal confusion, timing, budget concerns, missing information, or a real mismatch. And E, earn the decision. Allow value, clarity, and trust to support the decision. Do not pressure people into saying yes. Help them make a decision that is honest and informed. That is selling with integrity, my friends. And I want future entrepreneurs, especially, to understand this. You should never have to compromise your ethics to become effective at sales. If the only way your business succeeds is by manipulating people, withholding information, exaggerating results, or creating false urgency, then you do not have a strong sales strategy. You have a trust problem waiting to happen. This may be one of the most important things I say to you today. Before you invest too much energy into looking like a business, learn how a business actually works. You do not have to become an expert in every area, but you do need a foundational understanding of revenue, expenses, profit, cash flow, taxes, marketing, sales, customer acquisition, customer retention, operations, contracts, risk, and leadership. Eventually, you may want to hire professionals who understand certain areas better than you do. You may want to work with accountants, attorneys, marketers, designers, coaches, consultants, or technology partners. But even then, you need enough knowledge to ask intelligent questions, recognize red flags, and evaluate the answers you receive. Now that should sound familiar because it connects directly to what we discussed earlier this season with the copy and paste effect. Tools are valuable. Experts are valuable. AI is valuable. But if you have no understanding of what they are producing, how will you know whether it is accurate, ethical, useful, or aligned with your goals? Entrepreneurship requires learning constantly. The more you understand the business side, the less likely you are to confuse activity with progress or appearance with sustainability. So let's connect this back to career capital because every job you have had can potentially become part of your entrepreneurial education. Customer service teaches you people, sales teaches you persuasion and listening, management teaches you operations and leadership, accounting teaches you numbers, marketing teaches you messaging, and technology teaches you systems. Hospitality teaches you experience, retail teaches you customer behavior, and administration teaches you organization. So do not underestimate what you are learning simply because you do not own the company. A job can provide income today while quietly preparing you to build something tomorrow. So, to my younger listeners, hear this clearly. Please do not start your business simply because you do not like having a boss. Entrepreneurship may remove one kind of boss, but it introduces you to a whole collection of new responsibilities. Customers have expectations, clients have needs, banks, investors, deadlines, taxes, regulations, payroll, and your own standards all begin asking something from you because entrepreneurship introduces you to a whole collection of new bosses. Freedom in entrepreneurship is earned through systems, discipline, sustainability, and wise decision making. It is not automatically created by registering an LLC or announcing a business online. If you're unhappy at work, do not immediately conclude I should become an entrepreneur. First, determine what is actually creating that frustration. Maybe you need a different company, a different manager, a different industry, more responsibility, more learning, better boundaries, or a healthier environment. Or perhaps entrepreneurship really is calling you. But either way, make that decision intentionally. Do not use entrepreneurship to run away from something. Move towards it because you have identified something worth building, someone worth serving, a value worth creating. Now, before you launch, pause long enough to ask yourself the kinds of questions that reveal whether you are building from preparation or pressure. One, what problem am I solving? Can I explain the problem clearly or am I speaking in general ideas? Two, who needs this solution? Be specific, not define it as everybody. Who is the person, group, customer, client, or community experiencing the problem? What evidence do I have that they want it? Have you talked to real people? Have they shown interest through action, feedback, time, money, referrals, or repeated questions? How would I make money? Attention is not revenue, my friends. Likes is not revenue. Followers are not revenue. You need to understand the path from interest to income. What skills do I have? This is your career capital. Identify the capabilities, relationships, experience, and knowledge you already bring to the work. What skills am I missing? Now, that's your development plan. Be honest about what you still need to learn before the stakes get higher. What resource will I need? Think honestly about money, technology, people, training, systems, time, and support. A dream without resources may need a stronger plan before it becomes a responsible launch. What am I willing to risk? Every opportunity requires some level of risk, but healthy entrepreneurship requires understanding the difference between wise risk and reckless risk. And perhaps most importantly, ask yourself, what am I not willing to sacrifice? Your health, your family, your integrity, your financial stability, your peace, your values. Know those answers before success begins testing them. Readiness does not always mean you have everything figured out. It means you are honest enough to count the cost prepare the responsibility, and build from wisdom instead of pressure. Now, maybe you've been listening to all of this and thinking, okay, Doc, this sounds great, but I don't want to own a business. And you know what? That's perfectly fine. Everybody does not have to become an entrepreneur. You don't have to start a company, create an LLC, build a brand, or even have a side hustle just because everyone on social media has one. But here's what I do want you to consider: you can work for someone else and still learn like an entrepreneur. And actually, that mindset can make you incredibly valued wherever you work. Think about it. There are people who come to work every day, do everything that's written in their job description, collect their paychecks, and go home. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But there are people who start noticing things. They say, why do customers keep having these problems? Or why does this process take 3 days when it seems like it could take 3 hours? Or maybe, wait a minute, the sales department is struggling with something that we've already figured out over here. Why aren't we talking to each other? That's entrepreneurial thinking. It's being curious enough to look beyond your task and understand the business. And I want you to start doing that everywhere or wherever you work. Learn how the company makes money. Learn who the customers are. Pay attention to what customers need. Learn what happens in departments other than your own. Ask good questions. Build relationships across the organization. When you notice a problem, don't become the person who only says, well, that's messed up. Ask yourself, is there a better way to do this? And when you have an idea, learn how to communicate it. Don't just walk into somebody's office saying, this isn't working. Bring some thought into it. Here's what I'm noticing. Here's what I think may be causing it. And here's something we might consider trying. Do you hear the difference? Now you're not just identifying problems, you're creating value. And those are the people organizations begin to notice. They're the employees who do not necessarily need someone standing over them every minute telling them what to do next. They learn, they observe, they connect the dots, they execute. And over time, they begin understanding the business beyond the little box represented by their job title. Now I want to connect this back to our earlier conversation about leadership because this is important. Good leaders recognize these people. Great leaders are intimidated because someone in their team has ideas. They don't think, wait a minute, you're supposed to stay in your lane. Great leaders think, there's something here, let me help develop it. Because that curious employee asking questions today may become your manager tomorrow. They may become an executive. They may develop your company's next great product. They may discover a problem no one else noticed. And yes, one day they may take everything they've learned and decide, I think I'm ready to build something on my own. And that is okay too. Remember what we've talked about all season: career to capital. Every time you learn how another part of the business works, you're building it. Every problem you learn to solve, every relationship you develop, every new responsibility you take on. Every time you learn to communicate an idea and actually bring it to execution, you're adding to your career capital. So, no, you do not have to own a business, but you absolutely want to understand business because whether you become an entrepreneur, an executive, a manager, or an incredible individual contributor, understanding how organizations create value will help you make better decisions about your career. And maybe the question isn't, do I want to become an entrepreneur? Maybe the better question is, am I learning to think like one? Because you do not have to own the company to learn how to create value within it. Before we close, I want to invite you into a better way of earning community. These episodes are designed to start conversations, not end them. Inside of our community, we're continuing to explore careers, money, leadership, entrepreneurship, and the realities of building success that don't always fit into a 30 or 40-minute podcast. So here's this week's question: What's one problem you've repeatedly noticed that you believe could be solved better? Don't worry about whether it's a business idea yet. Just practice noticing because entrepreneurial thinking begins with curiosity. And let's learn from each other. You'll find the information to join a better way of earning community in today's episode description. Before we move into the closing reflection, I want to give you something practical. Because if we are going to talk about healthier pathways into entrepreneurship, we cannot leave people with inspiration alone. We need reflection, we need preparation, we need exercises that help us slow down long enough to build from wisdom instead of pressure. One, the why I am really starting check. Before launching anything, pause and ask yourself, am I building this because I see a real problem or because I feel pressure to prove something? Am I pursuing this from purpose or from frustration, comparison, boredom, or exhaustion? Your reason for starting will eventually affect how you handle the pressure of continuing. Two, the problem first journal. For 1 week, write down problems you notice in everyday life, work, school, your community, or online. Ask, what keeps frustrating people? What do people keep asking for help with? What process, service, or experience can be better? Entrepreneurial thinking begins with noticing. Before you ask, what can I sell? Practice asking, what needs to be solved? Three, the capacity inventory. Now, listen, this is huge. I want you to take an honest inventory of what you already have and what you still need. What skills do you already possess? What skills do you need to build? Who can teach you? And what do you need to understand before you launch? What are you assuming you know that you actually need to learn? This exercise helps you separate confidence from preparation. Four, the hype detox. For 7 days, mute or step away from business content that creates pressure, shame, comparison, or unrealistic urgency. Replace it with content that teaches foundations, money, customers, sales, operations, communication, leadership, and strategy. Sometimes the healthiest entrepreneurial decision you can make is to stop consuming content that makes you feel behind. Five, the evidence over emotion exercise. When you feel ready to launch, separate excitement from evidence. On one side, write what you feel. I'm excited. I believe people need this, or I think this could work. On the other side, write what you know. I spoke to 10 people. 3 people said they would pay for it. I tested a small version, or I understand the cost to deliver it. Excitement can start an idea, but evidence should shape the direction. Six, what am I not willing to sacrifice? Reflection. Before success starts demanding more of you, decide what you're willing not to lose. Am I willing to sacrifice my health, my integrity, my family time, my financial stability, my peace, my values? Know what you're not willing to lose before success starts asking for it. Seven, the small stakes practice. Before launching something big, practice solving a smaller problem first. Improve a process at work. Sell a small service. Volunteer to organize something. Test an idea with a small group. Lead a short project. Do not wait until the stakes are high to learn how you respond to responsibility. Number 8, the entrepreneurial maturity scale. Rate yourself from 1 to 5 in key areas. Can I receive feedback without becoming defensive? Can I keep going when people do not clap? Can I handle rejection without making it my identity? Can I manage money responsibly? Can I follow through when motivation disappears? Can I ask for help before things fall apart? This is not about shame. This is about awareness. Number 9, the future CEO letter. Write a letter from your future self as a grounded, healthier business owner. Begin with, Dear future me, if this business grows, I want to remember. Include your values, boundaries, leadership commitments, and the kind of success you do not want to chase. Do not just imagine what your business will look like. Imagine who you want to become while building it. And number 10, the Build Before You Brand Challenge. For 30 days, shift your focus away from looking like a business and towards understanding how to build one. Instead of spending all your energy on logos, colors, websites, and aesthetics, focus on understanding the customer, learning the industry, testing the problem, practicing the skill, talking to real people, and improving the offer. Branding matters, but branding cannot replace business understanding. As we close, remember this: the public playbook may tell you that entrepreneurship is the shortcut to freedom. Your success blockers may convince you that you need to look successful before you've learned how to become successful. Neither gets to define your journey. You don't need to rush. You do not need to imitate someone else's path. And you certainly don't need to quit a perfectly good opportunity because someone on social media convinced you that having a job means that you're thinking too small. Learn where you are, build your career capital, pay attention to problems, develop solutions, create value, and when opportunity meets preparation, you'll be ready. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep building a life that reflects your values, your goals, and your definition of success. Thank you for joining me for another episode of A Better Way of Earning, because success isn't about following someone else's path, it's about building one that works for you. A Better Way of Earning is where work, life, and money come together, helping you build success on your own terms.